Until this moment, Senator, I think I never really gauged your cruelty or your recklessness. You've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir?
A seminal moment in American history. That was Army lawyer Joseph Welch, who in 1954 famously called out Senator Joseph McCarthy and started his downfall.
Well, after announcing that he would not be seeking re-election, Republican Senator Jeff Flake invoked that moment in an op-ed blasting President Trump. Flake wrote, quote, "As I contemplate the Trump presidency, I cannot help but to think of Joseph Welch." Earlier on CBS This Morning, Flake was asked why he made that comparison.
Well, this was a time when Joseph McCarthy had gone on for a couple of years and had done a lot of damage, and nobody was willing to speak up. Members of the Senate simply let it go. There were a few things, a few voices that were raised, but until this time, until this hearing, when the chief counsel for the Army, Joseph Welch, actually stood up. They have no, decency, sir, that really turned things around, and at that point, that was kind of the threshold that I guess we had to get to, and things changed after that. People spoke out.
Let's bring in Ed O'Keefe. He's a CBS News political contributor and a congressional reporter for the Washington Post, and he joins us here on set. Welcome.
Good to see you guys. Yeah.
So lots to talk about, Ed. Let's begin with the extraordinary day yesterday, where you have two very prominent Republican senators coming out, one in several interviews that he gave to the press, essentially saying that the president of the United States is debasing our nation, that he is not a role model for children. And then Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona going onto the Senate floor and delivering a speech where essentially he says when generations look back at this period, they're going to ask us what we did, what did we say, and what are we going to tell our grandchildren. Some people are saying that speech is going to be in the history books. Is it?
We'll see. I mean, I think what he was conveying there certainly is what a lot of people in Washington think. That if we sit here in 20 years and look back at this period, what was I doing, what was I saying to either be for or against what's underway over at the White House? Clearly, yesterday, he was conveying his concerns, and they are the concerns of a lot of other Republicans.
But the president says that yesterday was a love fest.
It wasn't.
It wasn't.
No. I mean, he came in for lunch, apparently spoke for about 30 minutes, recapped about a dozen different topics, and then took a few softball questions from some of the more conservative or friendly members of his party. But there were a lot who left there a little flummoxed by the whole thing because he was kind of all over the map on policy. And while you can't cover a lot of things deeply in an hour or so, they kind of walked away from it saying, well, here we go again. He's just sort of touting what he's done, and he's pushing us to do more. And that's typical congressional presidential tension, but I think with Trump, it's clearly a little different.
But here's the thing. So some may be celebrating because some who were critical of the president may be applauding these two senators. But when it comes to votes, they pretty much vote along with what the president wants. So in terms of sort of impact beyond, Twitter getting all riled up, is this really going to change much?
I don't know. But I do think the dam may be breaking a little bit here. You've had the former president, George W. Bush, speak out. Barack Obama, of course, but John McCain has been at this for several months. Flake has been at it for more than a year, and now I think might even intensify it. Corker, undoubtedly you're going to see others as well. And you've seen governors and members of Congress and other Republicans across the country express concerns as well. The problem is it's those in Washington, in Congress, who really could stand in the way. The one way we may see Flake now speak up or act out is with his votes. Remember, he's got
senator. Another until 2019.
Right. And for example, on taxes, certainly he wants to see changes in the tax code, but the way that it may happen by expanding the deficit even more is intolerable.
Okay, because so far he's voted along with the president.
Yeah, and it's important to point that out because he's thrilled, for example, that Neil Gorsuch is on the Supreme Court.
He's a true blue conservative.
Absolutely.
He voted for the health care bill. I mean, like I said, maybe we're hearing complaints about the way the president acts, but in terms of policy,
he's a conservative, true to the core.
Absolutely.
He is probably one of the top 10 conservative senators in the United States Senate. The whole point of his book, though, was that it was called The Conscience of a Conservative, right? Which is, I think that's the title. Which, he's saying, yes, he believes in the principles of the Republican Party, but he believes that the president of the United States is not the person to lead those conservative principles.
Right. And that in many ways he departs from conservatism because he's not for global trade deals. He's not for paying down the deficit. You know, and just in the way he acts, and that to him is just intolerable.
Here's the thing. There may be some people, Democrats, liberals, who are seeing what happened yesterday, and they're going, finally. Although there's some also who say, look, he was acting this very same way during the campaign, and you didn't say anything then. But putting that aside, so some people are celebrating the fact that there are members of the president's own party, they're calling him out. There are others, though, who are saying, this is what Donald Trump went to Washington to do.
Exactly.
To remove the establishment Republicans from the swamp. And this is only the beginning. If you are Mitch McConnell, if you're Paul Ryan, you need to be quaking in your boots, because this is what Bannon has said he wants to do.
Another scalp, right? Isn't that Bannon said?
Another scalp. This is a
right?
victory for them. This is a victory for President Trump.
Yeah.
Do you see it that way?
It is. And for those that still support the president, absolutely. Yesterday was a great day. This is exactly what they want to see happening, and they've got two. They may get many more, because you see Bannon now organizing primary challenges to sitting Republican senators from Nebraska, from Wyoming, possibly in Utah, down in Mississippi, even one or two more of those. And that's a pretty significant accomplishment to have done that. And of course, the Alabama special election that's underway with the former Judge Roy Moore running. If he wins, huge victory.
So then, can the Republican Party even afford to have this be a breaking of the dam, or a watershed moment, or whatever, a tipping point?
It can't, unless it manages to also get tax reform done by Christmas. Because if they can't get that done, remember, let's get back to the business of governing. They're going to have an existential crisis.
Right.
Because if they can't get health care reform done and tax reform, and only really can pack the courts with a bunch of conservative judges,
they might not be able to get elected.
Exactly. What are they here for? It'll be a real problem.
Ed O'Keefe of the Washington Post. Thank you so much, Ed.
Good to see you guys.
Love when you come by.